Good morning. Thank you. The first, well, there he is. We were waiting on Mr. Clifford, Representative Clifford. He's here, so we'll get started. The first thing we have on the agenda today is a hearing on HB 2676, which is County Code Inspection and Enforcement Fund and County Equipment and Technology Fund. And for the purposes of reviewing that bill, we're going to call on, well, welcome, Kyle. Glad you're in our committee. Revisor Kyle Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I believe yesterday you received a copy of Jason Long's brief on the bill. The new language that's in section 1, it's relatively short. So let's just go ahead, take a moment and read through it all together. New section 1A, the Board of County Commissioners of any county may provide by adoption of a resolution for a code inspection and enforcement fund to finance the operations, equipment, and capital needs for authorized functions of such department, including but not limited to building, construction, land, water, and gas application, inspection, testing, and permitting. Said expenses may be supported with charges assessed to building users based that should be on there in line 13, so we might want to mark that for a technical amendment. Building users based on a schedule of fees to be approved and transferred to such fund from any source which may be lawfully utilized for such purposes, including the county general fund. And then subsection B says that those expenditures would be subject to the budget law. And the basic thrust of that, those reference statutes there in subsection B is to require local units of government to adopt a balanced budget through a process that's open to the public, and then it's bound by that adopted budget or its financial plan. It's not supposed to raise taxes or spend monies other than was provided in the budget. So anyway, referencing those statutes there in subsection B, it's basically just boilerplate language. And then moving on to section 2 of the bill, that would expand the county equipment reserve fund to include technology. The fund would be renamed the County Equipment and Technology Reserve Fund. In addition to the current authorized expenditures, the fund could be used by a county to acquire computer software, hardware, and technology supplies, and to finance other technology expenses, such as cloud-based computing expenses. And you'll see some language was stricken in lines 29 and 30. That language had stated that counties are authorized to purchase computer hardware and software for municipal purposes. Under the bill, that language would, the current language after that strike would include computer hardware and software under the umbrella term of equipment and technology without that qualifying language, again, which is now stricken. And then another technical note, at the bottom of page 1 in line 36, I believe it should say such equipment and technology reserve fund, or you could just say such fund. That was something that was, I think, missed in the drafting, so that would be something else you would want to add to a hypothetical future technical amendment. If enacted, the bill would become effective on July 1, 2022. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Thank you, Kyle. Good job. Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kyle, in my county for the past 20 years, we have entered into an agreement with the company to lease all of our computers, printers, everything in the building and departments. And every 5 years, that lease is up and a new lease is negotiated and all the equipment comes in. Does this fund allow for that leasing part, or does it have to be purchased?
So for the moment, I'm going to end up deferring to maybe our next conferees. I think they might have more on the ground experience, but if an answer isn't provided, then I can circle back after the meeting and look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I want to know what the counties are able to do now. I mean, I'm assuming that county commissioners are already purchasing It looks like on line 9, their equipment, capital needs, operation. I'm sure they already have computers. I mean, how does this change what's actually already currently law or they're able to do?
From what I understand, county funds need to be authorized in statute. And so as of now, there is not a specific type of inspection and enforcement fund that has been authorized by statute. And then for Section 2, that already exists, but it's being expanded to encompass certain new technologies. So for Section 1, again, it's just to create a separate fund for those expenditures. It might be easier to keep track of instead of just being in the general county fund. But again, I'm sure that the conferees will be able to elaborate.
So just so I'm clear, so they're already doing these things. They're already obviously entering into contracts, leasing, buying stuff. So this is literally creating another fee on the public to be able to support the same thing that we're already supporting. Is that correct? Because it creates another fee. It's creating a whole separate, which is actually something they're already doing.
So specifically regarding the language in Section 1, there is language saying that said expenses may be supported with charges assessed to the building users. And again, I'm not sure necessarily what the current practice is if there are fees that are already being assessed to kind of that same population of people. And maybe this is just clarifying that if needed, they could be assessed for this new fund, but it's not mandatory. It would be up to the county's discretion.
Okay, so there's other mechanisms in which this separate fund will be funded?
What I can say for sure is that the language here in the bill just says that the expenses may be supported with charges that are assessed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So kind of following up on Representative Lee's comments, this specifically applies only to inspection and enforcement. So all these other things that are already purchased by counties, this is out of the scope of this bill.
Right. The new fund that would be created would only encapsulate the stated areas there in Section 1.
So I guess, again, just kind of following up. So surely there is inspection and enforcement. So how are these items being paid for now?
So again, I'll defer that, but you could maybe see it as a restructuring of sorts to have these expenditures and the monies set aside in its own silo. So it could possibly be easier to keep track of, but other than that, I don't have a direct answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Sanders and Representative Lee, I think you're looking at this as a new fee. I don't think it is a new fee. It's already being paid out of the county general fund. You know, counties are limited and silo was the perfect word. What this does is creates a new silo that the counties can put these funds in just for that purpose instead of just coming out of the general fund. Does that make sense? It might not be a new fee. It's just going to be closed in that silo for those expenditures only. Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I've spent the last 7 years as a county commissioner, I mean, a county like Cedric or Johnson, you're talking about millions of dollars in inspection fees and monies. And right now it has to all just get stuck in the general fund of the county. This just creates a fund for that inspection. So you have a cost center for the people who are doing the inspections. It connects the dots. The other fund we already have in Section 2 for equipment, and we're just essentially renaming it so we can bring in the technology piece. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent response. Committee, any other questions? If not, we appreciate your time in our committee, Kyle. Thank you very much. Excellent job. Committee, I would like to call your attention to proponent testimony. We have 3 today. The first proponent we'll call on is 5th District Cedric County Commissioner Jim Howell. And not seeing him in the room, Gary, are we assuming he's going to zoom in?
I'm right here, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, or Mr. Commissioner, thank you. Welcome to Local Government Committee. There you are.
Chairman, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Jim Howell, Cedric County Commissioner. I'd like to start out by saying that this is a priority bill for Cedric County. It is on our Cedric County 2022 platform. There is no cost to the state of Kansas for us to do this. This is permissive legislation, so it's not a mandate to any county. There's a couple parts of this that the first part of this, I'll just say right now, I'm not a technical expert on the accounting side of what this bill does, but I can certainly feel empathy towards my CFO and her accounting department. Years ago, we did some efficiency restructuring of Cedric County. We merged a very large department with Wichita. And when we did that, the fees that are charged currently for code inspections and all that type of stuff are intermingled with all the rest of county general fund. And that's not easy to account for that. They can do it, but it's a real pain. And so what this bill would do is allow them to create a separate fund, which in my opinion is better for the accounting side. It's certainly better for accountability to the people who are interested in those funds, making sure they don't get misplaced or have bad accounting and things like that. So on the accounting side of this bill, this is really a very pragmatic issue to create a separate fund for that merging of Wichita and Cedric County code inspections and code enforcements and all that type of stuff. Again, we want consolidation where it makes sense. We did consolidate, but this is one of those things that no one thinks about until you're right in the middle of it. And as a commissioner, we've been talking about this legislation need for many, many years. And this year we finally got it as a priority moving forward. So I really hope we get the committee's support on this. It would help our accounting of those funds to be much more efficient and effective and accountable to the people. But the second part of this is really more interesting to me as a commissioner. As one of the members of the committee just said a minute ago, these are for Cedric County. Many of these technology needs for the county, they have expanded with technology changes and advancements in technology. The word technology has a lot of different meaning today than it had 35 years ago when this fund was initially created. And 35 years ago, they talked about hardware and software, but we have all kinds of things that are technology that really span virtually every department that we have. And so rather than letting each department do this independently, we have what's called a technology board, if you will. They are in charge of compiling those needs for different agencies within county government. And they make purchases, if you will, on behalf of all of our agencies. We get better deals, we get lower costs. It's more efficient and more effective to the taxpayer. But in doing that, when we do that, we want to charge those agencies for their share of what we're providing. So that when Representative Hong was talking about those fees, we're talking about those agencies have to pay the cost of the equipment that we provide for them through the Technology Reserve Fund. And so it's not a fee to the taxpayers, like a user fee for someone to use one of our buildings. That's not what this is talking about. We're talking about it's an accounting within county budget to make sure that the cost of those things where the Technology Review Board is providing to them that are better, it's a better deal for the taxpayer, but those are charged appropriately within the county budget. So that's what that word fee is in there for. Let me say also the technical amendment that was referenced by the reviser. That's a reasonable change. I don't have any problem with that change. And Chairman Thompson, you were exactly right. This essentially creates a bit of a silo so that we can do better planning. Here's the problem. As a county commissioner, imagine in 1 year you've got a $15 million technology need, and the next year you've got a $2 million technology need, and the next year you've got an $8 million technology need. That is difficult in a budgeting process. We have to pass our budget in August of each and every year, and this is very much a roller coaster. As a policymaker, one who has to actually approve that budget, especially under Senate Bill 13, we don't want to have a roller coaster relationship with the taxpayers. We want to smooth all those bumps and things out. So by creating, if you will, a broader definition of technology, it helps us, if you will, plan ahead and smooth out that roller coaster part of our budget. So we really do need this, and again, it's permissive. Right now, with the accounting on the merged departments, I call that a CFO nightmare, trying to keep track of the accounting of a lot of money that sits in our general fund. So creating that separate fund really helps our CFO on the accounting side. But this second part of this bill, expanding the term of technology, allowing the commissioners to plan ahead, it helps me on the budgeting side. And I think this is really a much better for budgets from year to year when we have such a huge amount of money being considered in some years. Let me give you some examples. Election equipment. We paid, I think, $7 million for election equipment back in, I believe, 2016. That's coming to end of life. We're going to have to replace that soon. And so it's going to be more expensive. Imagine a $10 million bill just for that one thing alone. And that's coming. So we want to, rather than do that in 1 year, I want to be able to put money back for several years. And this is just one example. Radios we use for all of our public safety people. Those radios are millions and millions and millions of dollars. We'd like to buy those in bulk because we get a better deal. But we don't want to do that in 1 year because it's extremely unaffordable. So these are just a couple of examples where technology is needed to have this type of a fund. And I've said plenty. So with that, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. I will make a point, though. I am stepped out of my BOCC meeting today. So if there's any questions for me right now, I'd appreciate to do that earlier than later, but I can stand by for the appropriate time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, former representative, current commissioner. Committee, any questions? Representative Lady.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So just so that I'm clear, so it sounded to me then, so this is more of an accounting mechanism versus an extra charge for the public?
Absolutely. This is no charge to the public. We charge interdepartmental charges. In other words, we move money from one department that had a need. Technology Review Board provided that equipment, and we send that cost over to that appropriate agency. So it's internal accounting, if you will. That fee's got to go to the right spot within our budget.
I sure appreciate that clarification. Thank you so much.
Committee, any other questions? If not, I guess we'll let you get back to your meeting, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do encourage you guys to pass this bill. It would help us greatly so much. I want to say thank you to the committee for allowing me to speak today, and God bless you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. All right, committee, moving on. The next proponent we have is Chief Financial Officer Lindsey Rousseau, I believe, with Cedric County. Is she available?
I am. I am virtual as well.
Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members of Local Government Committee, for allowing us to speak on this. I don't want to repeat much of what Commissioner Howell has said, but I am the Chief Financial Officer for Cedric County. And so these are two items that would be very pragmatic for us. So as was mentioned earlier, I believe by Representative Clifford, this is, we have 40 departments that work out of our county general fund. And so when it comes time to report out to our community and our builders on what is happening with our merged code operations, it is very challenging to do that in a meaningful way and explain some of the more technical terms about restricted and all of those things. So if we can put this in a particular fund, it allows us to then break that fund out in reporting and for auditing. And so we would simply take any of the funds that have currently been collected by that entity and move them out of the county general fund and into this fund. And then we would continue to assess the normal fees. It does not impose any new fee. It just allows us to deposit it there and fund the operations of this department in compliance with normal state budget law. Now, on the Technology and Equipment Reserve Fund, Section 2, that just tweaks an existing fund. It, as Commissioner Howell spoke to, it gives us greater flexibility with how we collect the revenues and how we plan for that. I also would point out that this would allow that fund, it already is treated as outside of the normal county operating budget, so it would allow us to have multi-year planning and budgeting. So for example, we just implemented a new CAD system for our 911. That spanned multiple years. Of course, with COVID and everything else that's happened, we haven't been able to complete that in the time that we wanted to. As you know, under state budget law, when the budget in a tax fund expires at the end of the year, that's it. You start fresh January 1st with a brand new budget. And the challenge that we have seen is that if we don't know that those projects are going to last longer, we obviously don't want to prepay for something even though it's in an operating budget. And so what this would do is allow us to move those types of costs into an ongoing budget so that we're not having to go to reserves or contingencies in order to fund those projects that take longer, because technology has evolved significantly in the last 35 years. So these are really just more pragmatic changes for us. And I really greatly appreciate your consideration and would so appreciate support of this bill for us to do our work. So thank you for your time today. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Rousseau? I believe we have a pretty good understanding. We appreciate your time and your clarification for us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, committee, moving on. The third proponent we have is Deputy Director Jay Howell with Kansas Association of Counties, or KAC. Mr. Howell, are you available online? Committee, Gary said that he did not explain specifically whether it was written only or he's going to appear live. So I think at this point we'll assume it was written only. Okay. Moving on, there are no neutral testimonies. There is no opponent testimony. This bill was explained to me early on, I think the first day of session, because Mr. Howell was in the building for a personal reason. I believe his wife was sworn into the Kansas House that day, but he caught me and we had a nice long discussion about this bill, and it made perfectly good sense to me the way he explained it to me. Not saying it's the will of the committee or not, but it's a good bill, and it would significantly help Sedgwick County and any other county that would want to take advantage of it. I think you heard Ms. Rousseau made a comment. There's 40 some different budgets that come out of the general fund. Again, these are not new dollars. This is just a way to silo certain dollars so those dollars go for that specific need. So if that makes sense, I hope it does. All right, committee, there again was no other testimony. You heard the entire extent of it. I would assume we would work this bill in a near committee hearing, but does anyone else have any questions then before we leave for today? Representative?
Mr. Chairman, this seems very straightforward. Would it be possible or appropriate to just vote on it today?
My only reservation on that is I would like to see the balloon, the technical amendment. Kyle had referred to, of course, Kyle is sitting in for our normal revisor today. He'd referred to, I would like to see the balloon in written form. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I agree with you. It's very simple. It's something at a next meeting I think we could handle in 5 minutes. But at least my comfort level would be better if we did see the balloon in writing. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sir.
Chairman.
All right. Representative Blacks.
I think we all understand this is the real benefit of having the explanations in committee and hearing the proponents, because when you first read that first section, new section 1, it was a little bit confusing, like we're creating something new that raises a few radar screens so I do appreciate the testimony here and the discussion, and it allows us to ferret those things out. And I agree, it's a straightforward bill at this point and doesn't create anything new other than a new flexibility for technology in that separate fund. So I thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we know of any other counties that have had this issue or that have spoken to you about it? Or is this just Sedgwick County? Because I'm assuming all county commissioners in the state are dealing with this. Has anybody reached out?
Other counties have had an interest in doing this. I think Sedgwick County is the most motivated just because of the sheer size of their budget. And then again, back to Representative Clifford's statements about 30-some, 40-some budgets all come out of the general fund. In Sedgwick County, just again, because of the sheer size of their budget, it allows them to trap those in that one silo so they can better handle it for accounting purposes. But I think should we pass this bill and should the bill move out of the legislature, I think a lot of counties would take advantage of this, yes. And here's the deal too, technology costs are different today than they were 35 years ago, right? Did I confuse you or answer any questions? Okay, thank you. It was their idea, quite honestly. No, it was Sedgwick County's idea. Yep, to bring the bill. Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative, that was going to be my question to the Association of Counties. But I too assume that this would be something that a lot of other counties would be able to take advantage of. I'm definitely going to let my county know about it. But I think, I don't remember who it was that said this in their testimony, but I thought they described it very well as permissive legislation. We're just giving counties flexibility, and gosh darn it, we should be their partners and helping them streamline, and it'll just be better accountability. They'll be able to look at what they're spending in that area a little bit easier. So I thought that description was perfect. It's permissive legislation, just allowing them to better operate.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Finney County, we share inspection services with the city of Garden City. Like you heard Commissioner Howell say, they share with Wichita, and it's always a bone of contention between us and the city of who's paying for what. So this would definitely help us segregate the funds. Thank you.
Committee, any further questions or comments? Again, Representative Sanders, I liked your idea, but I hope you understand. I'm not trying to defer. I just want to see this in writing, and then I think we can work through it pretty quickly.
No, I definitely concur with that. These amendments seem really simple, but it's always best to see exactly what you're voting on before you vote on it. So I concur.
Thanks for your understanding. All right, committee, any other questions? Anything for the good of the committee? If not, committee, we are adjourned.